Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. We're flying solo as of the moment. I think Emilio is going to be joining us here shortly. Always running behind. I wish Jacob was here to roast him over it, but hopefully everybody had an awesome Friday out there as we finally made it to the weekend on this glorious June the 6th, as we've got mandatory minicamp right around the corner for the Green Bay Packers, and really excited about getting all that information there. I guess next week, right, if I remember correctly. Go to the banner real quick just to make sure I don't have my dates mixed up. Yeah, so there's the deadline. Yeah, June 10th. June the 10th. So we're looking at, gosh, what is that, Tuesday, guys? Let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, probably Tuesday or Wednesday we'll get mandatory minicamps. So going to be an exciting time for Packer fans. We're going to get a couple more pieces of the puzzle put in place. We'll see if Elgton Jenkins shows up to mandatory minicamp. We'll see if Jaire shows up, and it's still amazing how you would think both players showing up would be a good thing. However, if Jaire shows up with no new contract, then he's kind of forcing the Packers' hand a little bit. And, of course, that's going to turn into, do the Packers just kind of drag that out for physicals and stuff like that for a couple of days? And if you're wondering, what are you talking about, Clayton? Basically, the Packers are not going to want Jaire to practice in their facility or on their practice field until the contract is restructured, because if for some reason he were to get injured and land on IR for the year, they're on the hook for that entire salary. That's per Jason Wilde. So that can get interesting, right? So the Packers obviously want him on the team, but for the right price. They've offered a contract. He has not accepted it yet. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the mandatory minicamp here on June 10th is kind of a marker, right? It's a kind of, I don't want to say a line in the sand, but the rubber's starting to meet the road a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We'll see what goes on there. Now with Elgton Jenkins, we want him in camp under the current contract. He's wanting some guaranteed money. So a little bit different there. He's liable to stay away. He's already missed the percentage in which he needed to obviously hit his bonus, his workout bonus. So it would probably be more beneficiary for him to withhold his services and put a little more pressure on the Packers to get him some more guaranteed money. Now, comes to training camp, you'll probably see a hold in, that type of thing, I would imagine, but kind of getting the cart before the horse, at this point right now. But we'll see how it all shakes out. And I want to go ahead and apologize. Wife flew out of town to Chicago today, so I've got all the pups up here with me. There's a thunderstorm rolling through, so if you hear them lose their mind barking, that's what it's about. And I apologize for bursting your eardrums there. But see everybody filing into the chat. Good to see everyone. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us this evening. If you would hit that like button on the way in, feel free to sub to the channel if you're new here. I want to say this. There have been people that have reached out and said, hey, didn't even know this channel existed. Get that a lot. For whatever reason, the algorithm doesn't pick it up very often. It's probably because I struggle really bad at asking for likes and asking for subs. I don't turn into that kind of show, obviously, in here begging for clicks and all that. But I will say this, if you are new here, this is something we try to go live daily, and we do a pretty damn good job at going live daily. We try to not just go live and talk about our favorite hot dogs and Mount Rushmore's players. We also, as Emilio's over there eating, I believe. Are you drinking something?
I'm drinking.
All right, you're good. We try to talk about things that matter. We try to talk about, key analytics. We try to dive into the tape. We do a lot of things. But I want to mention that, we had our draft season that just rolled through, and I feel like we've done a pretty good job of giving you guys consistent coverage. That was a lot of fun. Now we're going to be providing you coverage all through training camp, right? All through minicamp, all through training camp. And we get into the regular season too, guys. This isn't just hey, let's get on here, drink a couple beers, and rant and rave about the Packers. We try to approach this show the same way the organization is looking at the team. And what I mean by that is in season, it's going to be as soon as the game wraps up, actually before the game starts, going to get a pregame show on this channel. You'll get a postgame wrap-up, highlights, all the analysis and all that good stuff immediately following the game. Monday, we try to look back on it and go, okay, who had the the best game in terms of grades. So we look at the PFF scores, we go back through the stats, all that stuff. Usually by Tuesday, we try to do chalk talk, which basically we take the 10 most important plays, minimum of 10 most important plays from the game the week before. If it's a loss, we show you why they lost. And it's not to harp on the negative. It's not to get in here and bitch and moan and all that. We get in here and break down the tape and go, okay, here's what went wrong. If we had a great game and a lot of highlights, then we get in here and kind of run a victory lap and go, man, look at this play. And we break it down not just to this was a 45-yard touchdown pass from Love to Reed. We try to give you the formation, the personnel, the route concepts from a coaching standpoint, that type of thing. And then by the time you get into the week, by Thursday, we like to go ahead and dive into the next opponent, give you a little preview, look at the PFF preview, all that good stuff. So it's just a running daily show, and we try to approach it from how's the Packers coaching staff looking at this. And then when you get to contractual obligations, things like that, when it comes to re-signing players, we try to take a step back and look at it from the front office's perspective, that type of thing. So that's the goal. I want to go ahead and forewarn you, we screw it up every day because we're fans, we're not professionals, but it is a lot of fun getting in here and talking ball with everybody. So, Emilio, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Sorry to be late, Clay.
You're good. You're good, man.
Got laying on the old couch,
Hey, I can see it, guys. Look at the side of Emilio's face. He's got the cushion imprint. I love it, man. I relate to you more than you know, dude. I banged out a nap earlier on the couch too, man. It was pretty humid out here.
Mm-hmm.
So again, sorry to waste those few minutes on the front side of the show, but I did have people reach out saying they didn't know about the show. So just wanted to kind of, if anybody's new here, that's what we do here. So sub to the channel. Also, the best way to support what we do is a Patreon community. Just go to patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access or scan the QR code in the upper right. That'll also get you extra content, exclusive content, questions for the show where you can be a part of the show. And it acts just like a super chat. We still honor super chats here on YouTube as well, but this is just an added perk to supporting the channel. Remember the $3 tier, get you access to everything there. Let's get to the questions for the show here, Emilio. Randy said, had a question I'd love to hear the fellows discuss. Playing based on matchups is very common in baseball, basketball, and football, DBs versus wide receivers. Do you think we may ever see the day that an offensive line plays based on matchups? For example, as great as Zach Tom is, he has at times struggled against bull rushers. Could you guys ever see the day where an extremely versatile line plays each team based on matchups? Or do you think that ends up hurting the continuity and putting too much on the player week to week? Go, Pack, go. I think it's a great question, Randy. I love how you're thinking outside of the box. With that being said, the defense dictates who rushes where. So it would be an absolute cluster for an offensive line to try to line up over a specific defensive player. And that's kind of how I'm taking the question, Emilio, is if you've got someone that, hey, their best bull rusher, you don't want an offensive lineman on your line that blocks poorly against bull rush. You don't want him going up against it. All it takes is, okay, well, I'm going to slide over here to right guard, and then that guy kicks in the right defensive tackle. Now you're trying to go at the right tackle, and we know, I mean, you're taking the play clock down to the very last second, right, before every snap. So that's a problem there. But also, when it comes to offensive linemen, this isn't my perspective. This isn't my opinion, okay? This is former offensive linemen like Brian Balaga, Mark Tauscher, guys like that. You know, we as fans, and this isn't a shot at Randy, we've all been guilty of it. Like, just take that left tackle and put him over to right tackle this game. You know what I mean? Or if there's an injury, that guy's better than this guy. Let's put him in this spot. They say that if you want to know how difficult it is going from left to right on the offensive line, and Emilio's grinning because he knows what I'm about to say. This is their words, not mine. If you want to know how difficult that is, wipe with the opposite hand and not.
Yeah.
It'll be kind of tough, right?
It'll catch you off guard, and that will. I mean, but no, I think it is a great question by Randy. What I was kind of thinking was, when you're, if you're trying to match up corners based off of like speed or height matchup, if you want your corner to carry, if you got a 6'3" corner that you want with, the big receiver, you got a speed corner that you want to carry, and you're trying to play man or you're trying to play zone, and then then they go in motion, then do you go with him? So I think that you run into a little bit more of a headache than it's worth when you're trying to match up based on speed or height or any of those kind of factors. Because let me tell you, I've got myself in a pickle before on on Madden, Clay. You know, when you try to match up based on corners, they audible out of it. Then they reset the formation. It's a wrap. I mean, your defense is all over the place. You're worried about way too many things. So I do like the idea, and I think that, you know, maybe it'd be too much trying to switch the line around like that. Maybe per game if you had to, not per play. But I do like the idea, Randy. That's something that you could get to get to the next level.
And there's going to be people that scoff at Randy's question there because, you know, again, the league's been around for over 100 years and they haven't thought to do that to this point. They're probably never going to do it. But I'm telling you, man, all it takes is one or two teams to think outside the box and something becomes a trend. You know, if you'd asked somebody 10 years ago, hey, do you think that the most talked about play in the NFL will be the quarterback running a sneak while everybody just shoves him in the back to go forward?
Right.
You would have probably rolled your eyes at that. So you never know about these things. But I think that one is pretty far off, though. I don't think I would not bet any amount of money that they'll ever go that route. Now, if you get an injury in game and you're trying to decide, okay, who do we want to put at this position to fill in there, and you got to rotate some defensive or offensive line around, that's different. You may look up and go, all right, our right guard actually matches up with that defensive end as opposed to our backup tackle matching up against them. I could see that being the case, right? That is somewhat matchup based, but in terms of constantly following players to put yourself in an advantageous situation on the offensive line, I just don't see it happen.
That's when you run into problems with NASCAR package and stuff, where Mike is standing up across the head of the center, then hops over to the guard. Then you got, you know, Myles Garrett working on the hezzy step just to set him up to loop back across. So there's a lot that the defense can do to kind of separate, where you're looking at, like, you know, the receivers trying to separate from corners. The D-line can kind of separate from the O-line if they want to. If they want to get a matchup, they can kind of wait till last minute and get themselves in an advantageous spot.
Absolutely. So hopefully that answered your question, Randy. Appreciate that, man. That was a good conversation. Next, we got Jerry in the Patreon group said, is the Pittsburgh offensive line able to protect Rodgers? I haven't heard anyone analyzing how good or lacking they are. That seems to be what people are pressed into a little bit, is like, man, that offensive line's bad. Well, I mean, it's not the same offensive line as last year, you know? Yeah. And Jerry's not saying, she's asking, do you think that? So what I did was I just pulled the PFF grades here real quick in terms of Pittsburgh, and let's see if we can get it zoomed in. We'll just spend a couple minutes on this because I know people don't want to hear about Rodgers. I completely understand. It's a Packers podcast. I'm with you. If somebody asks a question, we're going to fire it off here and answer it. So their offensive line from left to right, Jerry, was, I think that's Broderick Jones, I believe, at left tackle. 58.7, not that good, bub, right? You got Samalo, if I'm saying that right, 66.3, pretty decent. Then you got Frazier, Zach Frazier.
Yeah, from West Virginia.
Remember us talking about him in the draft? He's a fifth highest graded center in the league at a 77.9, so that's a solid grade. You got McCormick, a 57.7 at right guard, and then you've got Fontenot is how how do you say it, Amelia? I've always said Fontenot.
Yeah, Fontenot.
Okay.
Fontenot, yeah.
Okay, got it. 64.4 there. Now it's showing that he doesn't have a ranking, so maybe he had minimal snaps. So
kind of like our Jordan Morgan or whatever, you know, on the line, but didn't have enough for the minimum.
Right. So when you look at this on the surface, I wouldn't say it's a horrible offensive line, but, you know, the most important positions on offensive line is tackle, and that's not one of their strengths. You know, it's not like us with a Zach Tom at 85 sitting over there at right tackle, right? So, yeah. And also Rasheed Walker grading out in the mid-60s. It just kind of shows you, if you were to compare Pittsburgh offensive line to ours, now, do I think Elgton Jenkins will grade as high as Zach Frazier? Recent history would say no. He's graded out in the 60s, he being Elgton Jenkins, moving to center. If he plays center, I mean, we'll see what happens there. I would definitely say the Green Bay Packers had a better offensive line than Pittsburgh Steelers. I know that wasn't the question, but if you want to kind of compare something that we're used to watching, you know, in that regard. Right. But, you know, people that still continue to pretend like Aaron Rodgers is a bad quarterback, I mean, 77.8. If Aaron Rodgers is a bad quarterback, then you got to say Jordan Love's a significantly worse quarterback because he graded out lower than that, right? So he's not MVP Rodgers, but again, as I said yesterday, he's a big improvement over Mason Rudolph. There's some ways about that. So
that's it. I mean, looking at the rankings, that you want to say you got a starting center, you got a starting, you know, left guard, the right guard technically starting top 64, the left tackle, you know, the first one that's out of it, top 65th. and then their right tackle doesn't have enough. So, I mean, theoretically, they all are starters. It's just, they're not. I mean, it's not a perfect offensive line by no means, but hey, it's not like Rodgers also had a lot of options either. So, I think that it'll work out. It'll be good for the NFL. They're playing the Jets, Vikings, us, play the Bears too, right? So they're going to have a lot of. I think it's perfect for the NFL wise. The schedule makers. That just kind of puts the thought in my head when I was listening to I think it was a Ross Tucker one where he had the one of the schedule makers on there, and they're planning these things out. They're trying to think of who could be a good matchup, what would be a good matchup on it. I mean, opening week they're starting against the Jets, and they have us. So for the NFL, this is perfect. I mean, they're happy that the plan came together, kind of like 2 years ago when Rodgers was starting before he popped the Achilles. You had all these teams lining up to play him, and you got all these time slots and everything like that. So hopefully it works out for Rodgers and the NFL. They're trying to get their money out of it as well, getting him in and against some familiar teams.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to the chat real quick. Chris Casuin says, Clay, are you concerned with private equity money getting involved with the NFL franchises that are not very liquid, like the Raiders as example? I don't want those type affecting the game we all love. Chris, I'm probably the wrong person to ask this to, because I am, as my wife refers to, I'm the stick in the mud. I don't like change at all. Like, I'm all about hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't like the idea of things getting shuffled too heavily with private equity entering the game at any other level that it's already at. I just want things I would like to see the cap be a little more towards the spirit of the rule with the salary cap, as opposed to trying to find all these loopholes. At the same time, there is a part of me, though, as a business owner and someone who's kind of, went against the grain in my personal life in terms of, creating income. I like to find those. I like to find that roundabout way. Like, hey, if you want to call it cheating, call it cheating. But just getting creative to bypass problems legally, of course. So I enjoy that aspect of the game, but at the same time, it's like, the salary cap wasn't created to operate the way it is, where you got kind of these phony contracts. Thank God it's not like Major League Baseball. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, maybe go check out, just go Google Bobby Bonilla Mets contract. That's Bobby Bonilla. They paid on that contract for the last 30 years or something. So, Major League Baseball, the contracts are fully guaranteed, so it's a much different animal, but that's just a perfect example of how they've gotten around paying a player that much money, and to the point where they're still paying on it today. I kind of like things to work in the spirit of the rule that it's designed, the league is designed to work under. But also part of me does kind of enjoy the creative aspect. You know what I mean, Emilio? I mean, that's what you're an entrepreneur too. Being an entrepreneur, your number one priority is a problem solver. It's not, oh man, somebody bail me out here. Let me go get another loan. Let me go do this. No, successful entrepreneurs, my favorite line is figure it out. Mandy gets tired of hearing it. Like when she hits a roadblock in our wedding planning business and our catering business, this and that, it's like, let's don't sit around and cry over this. Let's put our heads together and figure it out. And to me, that's the more enjoyable aspect of being an entrepreneur, and it's why I'm so drawn to the NFL and all of this money that's involved with professional football and now college. I've been more interested in college than I ever have now, because that's the Wild West. The NFL has kind of got things honed in a little bit. And somewhat of the business model. College football right now, Emilio, my God, everybody's just firing from the hip. They're just clawing at money every angle they can get it from.
Seriously, I'm excited to kind of see what happens down here, right? And kind of see who it benefits, right? Nico left. He wanted more money, didn't end up working out. He goes to a different school. Yeah, high school quarterback swings over here. Let's see what happens. I mean, is it about chasing money, or is it about chasing your opportunity? Is it about being in the right place, right time? we'll kind of see a little bit of that this year. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see. Let's go to the chat. Greg Rice says, can someone explain my dead cap is a bad thing for rich teams to take advantage of? And I asked, I didn't really understand the question, and I'm really bad at this. Most of the time, the guys have got to translate for me because I'm an absolute idiot. They'll go, Clayton, I think what they mean is this. Greg Rice, when I asked him to kind of, hey, explain a little bit more, he says, I do not really get it. Maybe someone else is better at it. I think the NFL is trying to get rid of teams using dead cap to somehow get around the cap. I think teams with deeper pockets can do it easy. Gotcha. Okay, now you're making sense to me here. He also said void years. That was the term. Sorry. I think he was referring to Ryan's pod earlier today or something as well. So yeah, basically what this is called, Greg, is cash over cap. And what teams can do is they can pay more cash for less cap space allocated. And what I mean by that is it's multifaceted, but players are willing to take less overall money to get more guaranteed money. Okay. That's like with Elton Jenkins. This could possibly work out for the Packers cap wise, right? Where they can convert base salary to guaranteed signing bonus, meaning we write him a check today and you go, oh, well, that hurts the Packer. It hurts their pockets right now. Right. But again, we've got, I want to say $500 million in a fund setback right now. That's the last number I heard as a stockholder, an owner, right? And for those on the pod, I'm using quotations because we all know we're not owners of the team. It was a donation to the team, right? Saying, hey, look, we're on board. Here's a little bit extra of my money. Y'all send me a really, really cool piece of memorabilia that says I'm a stockholder, which is something that's a tradition in Green Bay and gone on for years and years, where all the way back to the Curly Lambeau days where the fans were bailing out the team to keep them afloat, right, back when business wasn't booming. So with that being said, $500 million is a lot of money, right? But you can go through that real quick too. So you've got these owners like, the Walmart family. I think they're the ones who bought the Denver Broncos, if I remember correctly. And you've got all these other extremely wealthy owners, your Jerry Joneses and others. Lords. Much deeper pockets than the Packers. So if you don't get the voided years under control and the cash over cap under control, it's eventually going to catch up with the smaller market teams, right? And that don't have the big owners, big owner pockets, if that makes sense. So again, voiding years, what that is, Greg, is like with Elton Jenkins, for instance, and I should probably pull his contract up to explain it. Let me see if I can do that real quick. I'm just going to real quick. Let me get your take on what we kind of covered so far, Emilio. As I pull this contract up, I'll let you know when I'm ready.
Yeah. Kind of going back to Ryan's pod there, he was talking about how, it does kind of seem like some of those smaller teams might get the short end of the stick there. Baseball, Clay, do they have a salary cap in baseball? I don't follow.
They've got what they call a luxury tax, which basically how that works. And I'll explain the cons to this as well. It's really, really interesting. With baseball, they've got a certain cap, and you can go over that cap. But once you go over that cap, you're hit with an extra tax. And then that percentage of that tax that you get hit with goes into a pot. And then that pot is spread out to the teams who stayed under the luxury tax. Okay. Now, here's the problem with that. You got teams that never get anywhere near that cap limit. And then the teams like the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets, the Dodgers, who are like, hey, we want to win championships, they get taxed. That money goes into the pot. It goes back to those owners, and those owners just pocket that money. They don't even put it back into the team.
Right.
So, again, it sounds like a government program, don't it?
Yeah. But that's kind of, you're getting what, $300 million? When was the last time you saw a football player's contract was, $500 million, something nuts like that, right? It doesn't happen very often.
Fully guaranteed contract.
Right.
In baseball. Yeah.
So that's where you're like, it's just a different kind of sport, but I do see where you want to reel that in. You don't want it to get out of hand. You want it to be, that's why they have the draft the way it is. That's why they have everything set up this way. Football is still king. I do think we have a couple of kinks that we could clean up here. Just now that it's, coming into modern era, times, I think that at some point you just have to make a little bit of an adjustment after people have figured out, workarounds.
Right. Correct. Okay, so back to Greg here, voidable year. So let's look at Elgton Jenkins' contract. What you'll notice with Elgton Jenkins' contract, if you look in 2025, you can see this okay, right, Emilio?
Yep.
Okay. So you notice in 2025, base salary $11.7 million. Signing bonus is $4.8 million. Workout bonus, he's already forfeited that $500,000. He's already missed the percentage in which you needed to allocate to qualify for that, right? The roster bonus, I believe that'll come week 1 of the season. He'll get that bonus if he's on the roster week 1. Now, what Elton's worried about is look at next year. When you look at the cap hit next year, if I can get the dead cap on here as well, they make it so damn difficult on this side to get everything on there. I think we got it now. There we go. So in 2025, his cap hit is $17.6 million and his dead cap is only $9.6 million.
Right.
So what Elton's thinking about is, okay, you just asked me to change position from guard to center, which center gets paid significantly less. If I'm going to get another bite at the apple in free agency after next year, now my value has gone down because I'm considered a center or at least a hybrid of the two positions. Okay. Now, what he's saying is you look at next year, he turns 31. His base salary is $18.5 million. Notice the cap hit is $24.8 million, but the dead cap's only $4.8 million. What that means is, and this is how Goody and Russ Ball structure the Packers contracts. Next year, they could cut bait with him, and they would have a dead cap of $4.8 million, but they're going to free up $20 million in cap space. So the writing's on the wall for Elton. So what it kind of feels like for Elton is they're looking at it like, hey, let's move him to center. To hell with how this is going to hurt his value when he tries to hit free agency when we cut him loose, right? The guaranteed money, the majority of the guaranteed money's gone. He'll play for 1 year at center. We'll cut him loose, and then he takes a big hit trying to hit the market, okay, and we free up $20 million in cap space, okay? Now, is that fair? Is it's not? That's the business of the NFL. I want to say this, though. Elgton Jenkins is looking at it going, hey, how about we convert some of this salary to signing bonus so you guys are on the hook for more dead cap, and that gives me security that I know you're not going to cut me loose, and I get more guaranteed money in my pocket. So when you're talking void years, here's how the Packers could handle this. If I was Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball, you got to make a decision. Do you want – I get rid of that do-rag first. I don't think it would look at yeah, that's for sure. You got to make a decision, and this is what you call, what is it? Cost-benefit analysis, okay? Yep. Do we want Elgton Jenkins on the roster next year, yes or no? They may say he's declined and we don't want him on the roster. If that's the case, they're just going to stand pat, right? But if you say, hey, we'd like him on the roster for the next 2 years, and you got to take into consideration, is it worth it to take a hit on future cap space to make sure you've got him at center this year? It's another, cost-benefit analysis you got to make as well. So I would say, yes, it's worth it for me to know that center is shored up because you guys know how I feel about that position. I didn't think Josh Myers should have been on the roster last year. I was very vocal. I was actually vocal about it 2 years ago. And last year it became really, really apparent. Like, okay, yeah, I thought I might have been overreacting. I definitely wasn't overreacting. You've seen the market in which he had or did not have where he got backup money, essentially less than $2 million to go to the Jets and probably compete as a backup, to be honest with you. But I would go to Elton and go, here, let's give you a little bit of security. So this $18.5 million, how about we guarantee $4.5 million of it, okay? So we write you a check for $4.5 million, and you're under contract for next year. If we did that, but you agree to take a pay cut of $4 million off of the base salary. Now, he may say go to hell, right? But there's many players that look at it and go, okay, that ensures I'll be here next year. That puts a $4.5 million dump into my account, and I'll still be making somewhere around $9 million in base salary next year. If they cut me loose, I got a little bit of security this year. They've got more an incentive to keep me on the team next year. It's kind of a win-win. That's how Elton's looking at this situation, I would imagine. I haven't talked to – obviously, I'm an idiot. I haven't talked to any agent or anything like that. Now, voidable years, you go, okay, Clayton, yeah, but that $4.5 million, how are we going to allocate that or what have you? You're actually reducing the cap, but if you wanted to add a voidable year on, you can tack on dummy years in 27 and even 28 and then split that $4.5 million or even some of the signing bonus you already have. You could split it over those two voidable years to where you you reduce the cap by $4.5 million this year or next year in 2026, as well as the pay cut he would take on the base salary of $4 million. So essentially, his number at $24.8 million next year in cap hit would drop by roughly $9 million. So you could get that number back down to where it's at right here to 17.6, 18.5, somewhere around there. So it's win-win for both teams. Now, there are the salary cap doom and gloomers that go, well, you're kicking a can down the road. It's going to catch up with us. It has not caught up with us yet. The Saints have done this for 20 years, it seems like. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, look at their team. Their team isn't bad because they kicked the can down the road. Their team's bad because they handpicked Derek Carr to be their quarterback. They handpicked, as much as people love Taysom Hill, they paid him an ungodly amount of money to play tight end hybrid quarterback. And I think that was a stupid. So you could have taken that money you spent on Taysom Hill and gotten you a decent edge rusher to go opposite of trying to think of the defensive tackle that was down there for the longest time. Really, really good player. Cam, not Hayward.
Bergen, or
can't remember his name. Anyway, he was Pro Bowler year in and year out. So to me, their problem wasn't digging themselves in this cap. Now, the cap looks bad now, but guess what? Derek Carr is going to be gone. Now you start to dig yourself out of that hole a little bit. So, again, the Packers will never get that bad in terms of cash over cap in voidable years.
And that was kind of Ryan's point in the cash over cap is like, yeah, you can say that it's going to be the end of the world after you get yourself, to that cash over cap thing. But the fact that the Saints it's never really come due. You can kind of keep doing it. You get 1 year, where maybe you're bad and then you're all squared away. So yeah, putting the void years out there and then having that money come due whenever they leave, that obviously can't be a problem, because you do have to eventually allocate for that. But, it is, you're also got to think of the player's perspective. Like, Elton just wants some money in there. If you could get his cap hit, or the difference between his cap hit and his dead cap closer to what, 10 million, he probably feels a lot safer from getting cut. The fact that they could cut him and free up 20 million next year, that's a good chunk of money. You get that into the single digits, they might think twice about it. You might not need to cut him and get that squared away right away.
I apologize. Nitschke's over here. He's got the loudest collar on. And it's slapping around over here as he's digging. So Krista Cashwin says, don't you think Jenkins wants 20 plus per? It's possible. That could be the issue too. They could be going, hey, look, his camp could be going, I want a 2-year extension worth 20 million per. Could be the case. And maybe Aaron Banks caused that, right? If that's the case with Elton, Goody ain't going to do that. I would be very, very, very surprised if they give him a 2 or a 3-year extension worth 20 million per on average. Now, if it's all base salary with no guarantee, that's a different ball game. But
right.
If you're Elton, you're not looking for that without getting security,
Soder was asking, is Jenkins worth 13 to 15 per year per the cap hit for 2 years? I think so. I mean, that'd be a pretty decent deal, I think, if we got him locked up 13 to 15 for 2 years here.
My question would be back to you, Soder. You go with Jacob Monk playing center? You know what I'm saying? Like you go with Sean Ryan playing center? Because to me, it would be on par or worse than what we've seen with Josh Myers. And Josh Myers was the weakest link of the offensive line. That's kind of how I look at it. When I look at the cap situation, I'll try to be very clear here. I could care less about how nice the cap looks. There's a portion of the fan base. I'm not saying Soldier's like this. There's a portion of the fan base is like, they love looking up and going, look at us. We're in great cap situation, man. We're 40 million under the cap. Who gives a rat's ass?
Yeah.
Are we fielding the best 53? That's what I want as a fan. And without having to mortgage the future completely. So Elton Jenkins is the best option at center. Now, if we were to back up and say, okay, let's say that Goody decides Elton isn't worth 13 to 15 million per. He wants to leave it this way and cut bait next year, right? What's the plan? They made people have gotten this mixed up that they made a comment about Elton Jenkins being being a Pro Bowl caliber tackle, All-Pro guard, Hall of Fame center. They did not say that about Elton Jenkins. They said that about Zach Tom. Okay. Now, if you were to pick one thing out about Zach Tom, Emilio, and say, okay, what's the negative to Zach Tom? He's one of the smaller offensive linemen on the offensive line right now. Well, he would fit the bill perfect for center. So part of me, again, you got to look at the whole picture. What did Goody do in the draft this year? He drafted 2 tackles, and he went and signed a guard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, we always talked about the blueprint of you're not going to pay more than 2 offensive linemen huge starter money. Well, you're going to have to pay Zach Tom. That's coming up. I think we all agree they're going to do that. You just paid Aaron Banks, right? Well, what are they doing with Rasheed Walker? They're going to re-sign him and pay a 3rd highest. Well, if they do that, then they're breaking their rule, their standard, right? Now, who could play left tackle? Well, who's the camp battle going to be? Jordan Morgan. Do I think Jordan Morgan's going to beat Rasheed Walker out for the left tackle? My bet would be Rasheed Walker wins that battle. But guess what happens next year? You let Sheed walk. You put Jordan Morgan in at left tackle in that rookie contract. What did they do this year in the draft, Emilio? They drafted Anthony Belton.
Yep.
So what if the plan is, if Jacob Monk doesn't work out, you get Elton at center for a year, we don't redo his contract for 1 year, and then next year you go Anthony Belton's ready to play tackle, put him at tackle, at right tackle, kick Tom to center, you cut Elton Jenkins loose, you free up $20 million, you didn't have to pay Rasheed Walker, and you got all these guys on rookie contracts, and you stick to your mold of Aaron Banks being a high-paid offensive lineman, Zach Tom being a high-paid offensive lineman, and guess what you do the next year? You draft a couple more rookies again.
Right. Because that Aaron Banks one at that point would be in his last of the 4-year deal, right? That would be his 2nd year out of that 4-year deal where they could probably get out of it after that next year. So, it's that's where you're wanting to be able to stagger the contracts. I think listening to Love of the Star, they were talking like it just seems like they're not able to get the contracts lined up where they're staggered, where they're not having to pay everybody in the same year or something like that. I'm glad that Goody has been able to kind of stair step that and get that to a point where you can handle 1 or 2 a year, get it squared away, move forward. But yeah, the paying 2 offensive linemen, I think it's just odd because we kind of expected it to be Ellen maybe and Tom, and having an outside come in, get that payment, and then everybody else inside the house is trying to get squared away with their money. I think that's where it's kind of throwing us off. Or maybe they do pay 3 for this, these next couple of years if you have a little bit of room in the cap and stuff, and you're able to finagle the 3 because your wide receiver room's so cheap for the next couple of years, perfect. But that's another thing. We're not paying that number 1 wide receiver. So maybe you do have an extra 15 or 20 million you can mess around with for 1 or 2 years. But again, you got to stagger that because maybe you do have to pay the receiver in 1 or 2, and you need to be able to get out on one of those contracts either way.
Right. Chewy in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. He said, I believe that's Chewy. Garage Band and Grandmasters. Everybody changes their names so much. It's hard for me to keep up. It might not be Chewy. He said, that's why I don't understand the bank signing. They could have given that money to Jenkins. And I can understand you looking at it that way, right? But look at the PFF grades. And again, PFF isn't everything. But the reality is Banks gave up 1 sack last year. I think Elton Jenkins gave up more sacks than Banks, right? Well, look at their PFF grades. Jenkins is 65.7. Aaron Banks, 65.4, right? And then when you look at the age, right, Banks is, if it shows us here, 27 years old, right? Elton is going to be 30 this year. Now, you go, okay, so you're getting, according to PFF, the same caliber player, right? 2 years younger, 3 years, almost 3 years younger, right? And then you can lower the cap significantly with Elton. And keep in mind, Aaron Banks, that number looked huge. And then when we broke down the contract, it ain't that big, right? It's essentially a 2-year deal is what it is. So
it's kind of like we moved on from Aaron Jones, who was getting a little bit older, a little bit more expensive, brought in Josh Jacobs, who was 3 years younger, a little bit cheaper. And then you kind of go from there on a 2-year deal. And it's just.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that this is all cut and dry. You guys are asking great questions and making great comments. So we're just kind of having a conversation, trying to figure it out together. I think that's their thought process. And also, Aaron Banks fits that mold of what they want to do with playing some more bully ball with duo, right? With Josh Jacobs and building that offensive line a little closer to what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing with just the big hog mollies up front. Now, with that being said, you say, okay, well, Elton's a big guy too, right? Like, I mean, Aaron Banks is what, 6'5", 325 is what he's listed at.
Same for Elton.
Yeah, Elton's 15 pounds lighter, but the same height. But it isn't bring in Aaron Banks to get rid of Elton Jenkins this year. It's get them on the field at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, next year you reset and, move forward maybe without Elton Jenkins or with a rework deal. I think the Packers were looking at trying to save a little money with Elton next year, playing hardball with him. And Elton got ahead of the game. Very smart. Hey, figure it out with Monk. Let's get this contract done or figure it out with Monk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it feels to me.
And I think I was listening to the Move the Sticks actually had, Love of the Star actually had Ross Tucker on there. So they were just kind of talking. He was saying, I just still don't understand how guys can give up $500,000. He's like, that is free money for the workout bonuses. I get it on, when the team's stopping him from going in there, but $500K, man, that is not chump change. Though I know they're set for life, but he just makes it such a point that $500K is a lot. But he said, guys like Micah or anybody or anyone that's, a little bit older, still that didn't show up to OTAs because they're trying to figure out the contract. He said the players don't care. Like they understand they understand the game. They know what's happening. They're not mad at the player for not being there, not doing that. He said they want him to get his. They just want it squared away so that they can all play together, right? So it's just being able to get that taken care of ahead of this season so you don't have distractions that are affecting the whole team.
Right. Joseph in the chat says, but I think he's saying we'll pay Tom as a tackle. If we pay Tom as a tackle, who plays center? I don't get so caught up in that. How much are they making? Because Tom is a backup plan at center if we don't have anybody else to play center. That's the beautiful thing. And to me, it's more of a reason to pay Tom tackle money because you got that versatility. He can play tackle. We did it with Elton. I remember when they re-signed Elton. I can't remember if we were doing the show. I think that was the first year I was doing the show, or maybe it came right after I started doing the show. I said, man, they kind of overpaid for Elton. They paid him like a tackle.
Right.
And, of course, he was playing a little tackle, but he settled back in at left guard because they got Rasheed Walker. So I could see him doing the same thing with Zach Tom, paying him like a tackle. But, hey, if you need him to play center, he could play center, that type of thing. And again, Joseph, if the worry is, okay, you're paying him like a tackle and now he's playing center, okay, well, Anthony Belton steps in at tackle. That's a second-round pick, guys. Make no mistake about it. They're planning on him starting next year. I believe that with everything in me. I would be very, very, very surprised if Anthony Belton is not starting on the offensive line, whether he's good or not. You know how the Packers roll. If they draft somebody in the first 2 rounds, they're getting their butts on the field. The only reason Musgrave hasn't been on the field, the only reason Tucker Kraft's is starting tight end because Musgrave got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucker's so darn good, you can't take it away from him now. So if that's the case, you've got Belton with a second-round contract. The money you're saving there, to me, kind of compensates for the Zach Tom being overpaid if he does kick the center. Now, again, I don't see him kicking the center. I'm just simply saying worst-case scenario, that could be what you do. And here's the other thing. Let's say that you move forward with what you got. They call Elton's bluff. He plays this year, and then they cut him loose next year and with no new contract. Then you go into free agency looking to sign a center or looking to sign someone maybe to play tackle and kick Tom over to tackle. And then you take 2 or 3 swings in the draft if you don't like what you see in free agency. So it all kind of comes back full circle.
And to that point, Clay, they were asking Ross if he thinks that the interior offensive linemen are going to be a little bit more important or potentially could be more important than tackles nowadays. His take was that tackles are still put in one-on-one isolations a lot more than the interiors. You still have a 3-2, numbers advantage on the interior most of the time. But having a 3-tech and the pressure up front, he's like, obviously quarterbacks are able to step around some of that outside pressure, get up in the pocket, work around. But some of that interior pressure, you could be to a point, in 5 years where the interior offensive line could be getting paid, kind of like the tackles because you're getting too much pressure from 3-techs inside. That's where you're, hey, yeah, we paid a tackle, but we're going to need a center that's going to step up. We're going to need some guards. We're going to need some weight inside. And maybe you do need to start paying 2 or 3 of them, one of those being inside, right? I always kind of like, You know, if you could get a triangle, pay your 2 edges and pay your center, that'd be fine. You can work around the guards in between. You got a guy on either side of them that can help them. But max is 3. I don't see anybody really getting away with paying more than 3 offensive linemen. I think the reason why we could be able to is because we have such a cheap wide receiver room. I think you got to kind of see where you're able to save money on the roster that you have now and kind of work around that.
Yeah. AFAM in the chat says Zach Tom is not getting extended. Y'all need to wake up. All right, we got our first bet of the year. AFAM.
Put that on the ticker?
Yeah, put it on the ticker for me, Emilio. AFAM, here's the bet. I want to know if you take it, all right? You got to let me know as soon as possible here in the chat. 1 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts delivered to mine or your front door, okay? If Zach Tom is extended by next offseason, okay? Because, again, the contract might not get done in training camp, but he's going to get extended by the Packers. There's no 2 ways about it. You owe me 1 dozen of Krispy Kreme donuts. If Zach Tom walks in free agency this year and does not get extended, I owe you 1 dozen. What do you think, man? Let me know in the chat.
I like it.
Greg Rice said, AFAM is drunk. He said, AFAM is drunk. Coach Lynn said, what you smoking? Greg Rice says, AFAM butt tat? Question mark.
Oh, boy. Uh-oh.
AFAM says, AFAM is sober as a judge. That ain't that sober nowadays, man. You got to – I've read the newspaper enough to see a couple of those judges in the news for sure. So that's nice there, Emilio. It's a good time to pop that up on the
show. I was trying to pull this one up, clicked on the wrong link there. There we go.
All right. Just let me know if you're in or not. AFAM. Yeah, this was a fun conversation. We did not plan on this, but man, that first hour went by pretty quick. Let's end it right there. For those of you listening on the pod, that's going to do it for hour 1. We will pick up in the second hour where we're going to talk some LVN, well, Lucas Van Ness. I think you guys would be surprised with some of the numbers and kind of what the future looks like for him. But we appreciate y'all. We'll see you on the other side.